people treat finance as difficult or as painful as removing your tooth. कोई मर रहा है और उसको आप बोल रहे हो कि तू मर जा. It's as cruel as that, because if the bank is already weak, we are silently trying to bring it back to health. And then we say that the bank is dying, you withdraw all your money. Even a state bank cannot survive if all the money, all the depositors go at the same time to withdraw their money. Why? Because all banks are leveraged, what is known as. At that time, we were acting like a good soldier for the government, because government was in its right to take that decision. Economists or economics will never support such a decision because it's not a good economic policy.
Ma'am, I have many questions. So all the viewers who are watching this could be a long session. So I hope you can bear that and continue to listen. Hello everyone, welcome to iExamB, and we are here today with a very, very interesting session with Ms. Alpana Killawala. Hello ma'am, welcome to our platform.
Hi Prachi, it's nice to be back.
Yes, absolutely. So last we had a discussion with ma'am somewhere around August 2023 when RBI interviews stage was announced, and ma'am was very kind enough to give guidance to the students in relation to their preparation for interview. You had seen the glimpses of that session on our YouTube channel last week, and I had got some queries from the students, and everybody was looking forward to another conversation with ma'am. So here we are. And thank you, ma'am, for taking out time from your busy schedule, especially right now when, you are busy talking to everybody about your latest book here.
It's always a pleasure, Prachi.
Thank you, ma'am. So let's start with your book. So ma'am has recently written a book about her experience with RBI. And apologies, I need to introduce ma'am. So Alpana ma'am had joined RBI in 1992. And yes, and this is the book that she's come out with, her entire experience in 26 years with RBI. And ma'am was a principal advisor, communications, and she's worked with 6 governors, RBI governors in her tenure, starting with Dr. C. Raghuram Rajan and then up to Dr. Urjit Patel. And so here, talking about ma'am's book, ma'am, very, very interesting title. So what made you choose this title, A Fly on the RBI Wall?
Honestly speaking, I was toying with the idea of something to do with central bank communication, and that was getting to be too boring. And then a journalist friend, actually not right to be calling him a journalist, he's more of an economic journalist, so to say, and senior and a well-wisher. So I was talking to him and he said, what? Fly on the wall. So it became Fly on the Wall.
Nice.
Significance is fly is comparatively harmless, and it doesn't bite you in that sense. And fly is also a very insignificant insect. If you see, if it's sitting on the wall, nobody will even notice that it's there on the wall, but it can sit quietly there for a long time without anybody noticing. And what it notices, we don't know. So I thought that it fits me well as a communication person. I was not in the center of decision making. I was on the periphery and quietly observing, not contributing in that sense, except for on the communication part. So I thought that Fly on the Wall kind of title fits in well with what I was writing in the book.
That's quite interesting, actually, the analogy, and, makes sense, and actually the small insects, animals, as you may say, we tend to neglect them. So very interesting. That's reminding me how even iExamB, we got the name. We brought in the bee in the name for the very reason that they are one of the most hardworking creatures. And they can be relentless on and on and on and on, and then the type of nectar that comes out is not just helpful as an end product, but the entire process in itself is very, very bringing out the nectar. So that was our thought when we brought the word "be" into our name, to even motivate the students and ourselves, of course, as a part of the company. So it makes a lot of sense. And these, as you rightly said, these small insects or creatures we tend to ignore, but they have their own importance and way of working. A great
also another thing you pointed out that which occurred to me while you were talking, that we tend to ignore them. So we tend to ignore a function like communication, which is it's a kind of support function, not the mainline function. Mm-hmm. So most managements ignore, and they bring it in the center only when there is a crisis. Kept them samhalo types, Whereas communication, all throughout the book, what I have stressed is this, that if you treat communication as a strategic function, then it can yield results, successful. And otherwise, if you treat it as a residual function, then it doesn't yield much. Take care. It happens.
Very interesting, actually. Yes. So, and now that you say it, it does happen. We tend to take it for granted and not really need it, that, you really need to be cautious about it. So, very, very good point, ma'am. So let me start with this. When you were hired in 1992, in the public's eyes, in the public domain, RBI did not really have much presence. People may not even know. And of course, it has improved over the years. But even today, I will say for a common man, RBI still is an organization that may be there, financial world, but the common man may not know it, apart from the fact that, we can see it on the currency. So that's in everybody's hands. So that's where the role of RBI may get limited to in a common man's life. And even RBI, of course, again, I will say it has improved over the years, but it's been a little conservative being in public. So why is that so? Why is RBI so conservative when the functions that they carry out is actually impacting the common man's life every day?
Actually speaking, the nature of the institution, the central bank or the regulator, that in a way keeps us, how do I put it? The functions that we handle, except for currency, as you rightly pointed out, we are not directly interacting with the public. We are not supposed to. It's through the banks that even the currency notes, for that matter, people feel that, RBI gives me currency and RBI exchanges the currency notes and all that. But honestly speaking, we have authorized all the banks and all the branches to exchange currency notes for public. So we are trying to reduce interaction with public directly, because we as central bank are supposed to be in the background. So just to give you an idea, or rather another analogy, we were devising a public interest campaign for regulations that RBI comes out with and which directly impact the members of public. And at that time, I was still in the RBI. So at that time, we were thinking of how to present RBI. In communication terms, you call it a persona. So you have to imagine a persona of the subject that you're dealing with for advertisement. And then according to the persona, you give it character, and you give a name, and you give dialogues, and then the whole copy and all that takes place. There's a theory part of advertising. But when we were thinking of RBI as a persona for that campaign, one advertising agency came up as a shadow for depicting RBI's persona. And he had visualized a glass cabin, and then there was a shadow. And then he was talking about how RBI protects the bank depositor. And we had liked that idea very much. So that being the nature of the institution, that it's there everywhere, but in a silent way, in a way protecting you. So whatever we do protects or has an objective of protecting people. We don't need to go on the rooftop and shout about our work and all that. We quietly do our work. And the only difference that in the 26 years I tried to do is to bridge the gap that existed between the public and the central bank. So whatever needed to go to the customer as his right, that we tried to bring out in that. So to that extent, we spoke. But we don't speak about each and everything that we do. That's not the remit of the central bank. So you may find that RBI doesn't say much, but you ask a question and it will be too willing to give you an explanation. But on its own, it will not speak. That's the nature of the institution. That's it.
Okay. So it comes to because, the nature of the work, as you rightly said, is impacting people, but it is through the banking system that it is being passed on. And as you mentioned that, as the communication department was set up, the information network was better established between the media and the RBI. So was that the reason for bringing you in 1992?
Actually, it was a very interesting phase. When I joined, it was Mr. Venkatramanan who was the governor at that time. And we were in the midst of a very horrible balance of payments crisis. We didn't have enough foreign exchange to do more than 3 days imports or some such thing. And we were also in the midst of Harshad Mehta crisis, scam that was, which was, he was playing the stock market and all that. So with banks' money. So that being the situation, it was Mr. Venkatramanan, the then governor, who I used to meet as a journalist. I was a journalist and try to understand what the RBI is doing and why and all that. And then he must have internally told some people that, we must get somebody like her so that the department becomes active. Department was there. Not many people within the RBI also know, even today, that the department, it was a small division of another department, but it was there. And before me, there were 2 professional journalists who had been in the division and as heading that division, and they were already there communicating. After they retired, there was a gap, and then I joined it. But it was an interesting period because a lot of things were happening as a BOP crisis came in to meet that, to fight that. We decided to take that, reforms program, which went on 3 levels. It was economic liberalization, it was trade reforms, it was central bank monetary policy reform, and it was trade in the sense of foreign exchange reform. So all these happening, the central banks the world over were also moving towards more transparency. They thought that it is their responsibility and they are accountable to the members of public in terms of monetary policy and whatever other actions they do. And so they were more and more opening out from their, holier than thou and mysterious ways of dealing and talking. And at that time, I entered the bank. So it was like the need was mutual. The central banks wanted to open up. The public was demanding more information. And I went in. So it became kind of what Dr. Jalan later on told me was, which I have quoted in the book also, that you happen to be at the right time, right place, and the right person. And so a lot of things happened. So it was with a view to opening up and with a view to creating more transparency that I was recruited as a professional. I was incidentally the first professional to come into the Reserve Bank at the senior management level. I entered the RBI grade D.
Yeah.
That's right. So it just so happened that, I entered the bank at the right time.
So, like you said, and I was reading some experts from your book. I'm still yet to read the entire book, but some experts that I have read. So, you'd mentioned that you used to frequently seek audience with RBI governors or deputy governors. I'm sure to the coverage for your journalist days that you were there. So I can understand when Dr. Jalan must have said you were at the right time, at the right place, because if other journalists were also seeking, they could have got the opportunity. But you were one of the very, very few who used to seek audience with RBI that time.
There were quite a few actually who were meeting RBI people, but not so many, because RBI was still a very complex subject and not many people wanted to cover it, because banking and finance, even today, if you will see, banking and finance are supposed to be complicated and not many people want to go near it. But RBI, I used to meet a lot of people and try to understand what their approach is and all that. So a little bit of understanding of the subject also helped my being there.
So you touched upon this, so I'll bring this question in between, ma'am. You said many people are scared or, don't understand it so easily, the economics and the finance aspect. Why is that so when, there's a host of information available today? Because I face this, even as a faculty while interacting with students. So more than the difficulty, I see there's a huge fear and a bottleneck to take up the subject, even while preparing for the exam. So although I have seen over the past few years, finance questions are not really that difficult, but I see a huge bottleneck in the students accepting it and going in for studying it or starting it, studying. So why is that so in your opinion? How it can change?
Actually, it's a very strange thing, a person like me who is an arts graduate. I find I have never tried reading physics. Of course, in school and all that, we did physics and chemistry and all that. But let's say engineering as a subject, I have never studied. And I have never even opened a book of engineering. So when you tell me engineering or mechanical engineering or chemical engineering, I will feel scared of that subject. I will think that I will not be able to manage that, because at this stage, forget that I have retired and all that. But even when you are grown up and you have studied in one particular faculty and you have tried to understand and imbibe that subject, when you talk about another subject, you feel scared that you may not be able to handle it. But actually, I have learned, meaning as a graduate, my subject was political science and psychology. I haven't studied economics except for first 2 years in college. So when I entered my whole work life, on the other hand, I have done banking. My first job was banking. My second job as a journalist was banking and finance, and the whole rest of the life in RBI. So it was central banking, a lot of hardcore banking. So how do I understand banking? But you read, you try to understand, you have that basic intelligence and common sense. And I don't think any subject can be a matter of, you may feel it initially, but if you apply yourself fully to that subject, I'm sure nothing is difficult. Provided you have the basic intelligence, which I'm sure all of us have, and a little bit of common sense with which you apply your mind to that subject at hand. Also, another thing which we learned, I also learned, and we tried to implement it, that we don't teach our children finances and how to handle money. No, paisa, nahi, wo daddy ko handle kar dete. Paisa, nahi. Tell your mom to give you some money. We prevent our children from handling money. Why can't they keep household accounts? Why can't they go to the bank and deposit your check? Why can't children, 5-year-old children also can learn handling, how to handle money? Nothing is difficult. Only thing is that money for us is sacred, and we treat money like, difficult and all that. And we don't give enough attention to it. And so people find economics and banking and finance very difficult. In fact, I remember reading somewhere, I think it was an OECD publication, which said that people treat finance as difficult or as painful as removing your tooth at a dentist place.
Really?
Yes. But it's not so. You apply your mind and nothing is difficult.
So very beautifully presented. I'll reiterate a few points that ma'am said. So all of you watching, and if you fear finance or economics, or if you are second guessing whether to prepare for RBI, is it a job for you or not? So it's more about the interest. And as ma'am said, basic intelligence, basic common sense, which all of us have. You all are graduates, you all have that. So beyond that, there's nothing that cannot be learned. So it's the initial step that you need to take, that fear of unknown, just cross that. And I think after that, it will just become smooth. So, and of course, we are here, and that's why we keep talking to experts also to, reestablish those facts, because hearing from other people also gives us the motivation and the strength to cross that bridge, that small bridge, but the one very difficult to. So thanks, Pam, for taking that in between related to preparation. So coming back to the communication aspect. So you rightly said, the function and the nature is such that RBI is not, every day not sitting in the media. Otherwise, whatever is necessary, they have the presence in the media today. But this also be seen that, it's limited to the governor or the deputy governor. No other personnel we'll see, not even, how the working is. There's very less information until, and over the years, we've only been able to get that through people who've actually worked and moved out of RBI. So is it just the thought, the conservatism there, or RBI doesn't want people talking much about itself or the functioning in public?
One is that, of course, that we don't think we should go every day to the media and speak about ourselves or our work or anything. So one, that what's that word? Internalization is quite a bit there. The other thing is we have a communication policy in RBI which says very clearly that the spokesperson of the bank is the governor of RBI. Not even the deputy governor. Deputy governor is authorized by the governor to speak, but otherwise on his own, he doesn't go out and make public statement. Of course, they make speeches and all that. So authorization is more in terms of, tacit understanding between the two, and not really, he doesn't have to every time go and give his speech for approval to the governor and all. No, he's a free person, or she is a free person, but tacitly, the governor gives permission. And the other people down the hierarchy are not authorized to speak. They can only clarify. So whatever is the stated policy, anybody can clarify or anybody can explain. Speaking, only governor does. Why so? Because central banking is a subject which affects the market directly. So today I am walking on the road and somebody asks me, interest rate, let's say monetary policy is close by. And somebody asks me as to whether interest rates will go up or down. And I innocently say without meaning anything, and I'm not even close to the monetary policy making. And I say that interest rates will go down now. There's only one way. The market will immediately react because the central bank person has said that interest rate will go down, and a media picks up and highlights it in its pages or in its screen or whatever. Then the market will move. And if market moves, somebody makes money and somebody loses money. It brings in gyration, as we call it. It kind of, shakes the market, which is not the intention of the RBI. Central bank doesn't like gyrations because it hurts people.
Ma'am, I have a lot many questions. So all the viewers who are watching this could be a long session. So I hope you can bear that and continue to listen, because I have few more questions, in fact, which I would like to ask ma'am on behalf of the community, student community also. So stay with us and I'll continue. So ma'am, on this topic, one last question about RBI's presence in the public domain. Do you think this somewhere hurts the HR aspect of the organization, because a lot of talent in our country may not even know about the opportunity that RBI offers of working with it, right? So maybe the huge talent it could attract, it gets lost because it's not so well known, so commonly known. If I compare it to, UPSC, everybody would know. But this is an equally challenging and responsible job on the monetary side, like they work on the fiscal aspect and all. So do you think this hurts RBI in terms of the quality of personnel in HR it can attract and talent it can attract?
Not being in the public domain so much, you mean? Yeah. No, I don't think that hurts RBI, because people who want to go in public service have only few choices. Either you join the government, so you appear through the UPSC exams and join the government as an IAS or IRS or IFS or whatever. Or the other thing is the RBI, because it's a policy making body, and you can contribute to policy making by being in RBI. And those people who read public policy or read about public policy and who read about public service, they would know what is RBI. And RBI also has this competitive exam, and we follow the mass kind of recruitment policy. We don't recruit in mass, but the policy is open to all kind of thing. We don't go to campuses to recruit people,
right,
because it's not equal opportunity. Being an equal opportunity organization, we advertise in newspapers, in all sorts of public forums, and then we invite applications and conduct all those exams and interviews and then recruit people. So I would say that RBI manages to get the best of the talent. We have engineers, we have PhDs, we have management graduates, we have lawyers, we have chartered accountants, all sorts of qualified people we have who are put into various functions.
Why is the communication not more clear to avoid any kind of misinterpretations or different interpretations?
I can give you an example of a bank. So let's say there was a bank and the bank is weakened, and we are constantly at its neck through our inspections to correct the position. Now it has thousands of depositors and lakhs of crores of deposits of those people, who somebody may have 10,000, somebody may have 10 lakhs, somebody may have, 5 lakhs or whatever. But everybody's money is hard-earned money. And if we see that the bank is going down and under, many times this question has been asked of us, that why couldn't you take the action earlier? Why couldn't you warn the public that this bank is weak? You cannot warn the public about such things, because if you warn, वो जैसे मरते को मार बोलते हैं ना, वो हो जाता है. मतलब कोई मर रहा है और उसको आप बोल रहे हो कि तू मर जा. It's as cruel as that, because if the bank is already weak, we are silently trying to bring it back to health. And then we say that the bank is dying, you withdraw all your money. Even a state bank cannot survive if all the money, all the depositors go at the same time to withdraw their money. Why? Because all banks are leveraged, what is known as. So for 10 rupees of deposits that I get at a bank, I have lent out 100 rupees. Presuming that all my 10 rupees will not be demanded at the same time.
Right.
So I have invested that money idle. I can't keep that money idle. So I have invested, I have lent it out. I'm earning interest on that. So we can never warn the public in terms of the health of the bank. It is for the public to see, because all banks being listed now, most of them are listed. What happens is every quarter they come out with results. The results are in public domain. Some statements here, some statements there. But you have to be vigilant. And you have to give attention to those things. And only then you will understand that there is some problem there.
But ma'am, a common man we can't expect a common man to be going through the financials. Even after the banks and companies being listed, we see so many people investing. So forget about deposits, or still we say it's our money in the bank. Even for investing, when you invest in the stock market, where you totally rely on the company's performance and the entire risk is yours, a common man doesn't really have the wherewithal to be able to analyze that and understand there is a risk there. So from a depositor point of view, I think it's not really practically possible that a person goes through the financials and then takes a call which bank is good. And I think that's why RBI is so important. We rely on the fact that RBI is sitting there. Then all the banks, if they are functioning, and if RBI is allowing them to function, then I can trust it.
You put it so correctly and so accurately, Prachi. That is exactly what we have been trying to do through our regulation and supervision all along. We know that the depositor is not a risk taker. A depositor is different from shareholder, because shareholder knowingly and willingly takes risk towards a company. Be it a bank or be it any other company, he knows that he is taking the risk. Tomorrow, he may get capital appreciation, he may get the dividend, he may get bonus shares. He may also run the losses and bear the losses of the company. So he knowingly takes that risk. Whereas in a bank, a depositor, not a shareholder of a bank, we are talking about the depositor. When he goes and keeps deposit in a bank, he does it on trust. You use that word, that we trust. And the trust is indirectly also showing towards RBI, because they know that somewhere behind the scenes, RBI is looking after their interest. And that is why we are so strong, and we are so careful in our supervision and our regulation, that the small depositor who has 10,000 rupees of deposit, which is his life saving, 50,000 rupees of deposit, which is again, he banks on that. That is not lost. Because if that gets lost by bank going down and under, he loses pay. And therefore, we keep on saying that banks have a fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary is what? Trust. If somebody has trusted you, so you better keep that trust. So, that being the role and function of RBI, that is why we are working behind the scene rather than in the forefront. Because the moment we come in forefront, people get alarmed. And that's not the reason. That's not why we exist.
Okay. So, ma'am, during your tenure, what I can remember, some very good eras and bad eras is what you might have seen. So I'll take three examples, big ones. One, when you just entered, you also mentioned about the 1991 reforms were just coming in, the LPG reforms in the country, opening up of our economy. And of course, we know, I on this side, our generations and the generations who are coming are reaping the benefits of all those reforms that have come in India. And soon after, just 1 year into getting those reforms, we heard about the Harshad Mehta scam in 1992. So I'm sure it must have been chaotic, because it was not just a stock market scam. It also involved the bank receipts that were used to fund the entire buying by the Harshad Mehta group. So, and when you entered, so how was it like in RBI at that time? It must have been a lot of chaos and chaotic condition in the within the RBI, and you entering in and handling the communication. So both your experience from what was going on in RBI, what were they trying to do, and on the other hand, how were you able to communicate that and try to handle that situation in the public domain?
It was a difficult time, no doubt about it, because on the one hand, there was a lot happening outside. There was a lot to communicate. And I had just entered the bank. So I was trying to find my feet within the bank and with the media outside. The only positive point about the whole thing was that I had covered the Harshad Mehta scam outside, and now I was inside. So I didn't take a very long time to get into the shoes and start walking. But at the same time, understanding the nitty-gritty of the media, understanding the nitty-gritty of the scam, and then to communicate. Thankfully for me, there was already a committee set up within the RBI called the Janaki Raman Committee, which was going into the entire details of securities irregularities and producing reports of those transactions. So there were some, if I remember right, 6 or 7 reports already come during the first year and a half or so of my entering the bank. And I remember we were taking copy. Those times, this internet and all those things were not there. So we were taking physical copies, and press would wait in my room, and we would take so many copies, bind them and give it to them. They would go read, write about it next day. And it was that kind of chaos, Otherwise, within the RBI, and so far as the scam was concerned, things were sorted. In the sense that there was a committee with Mr. Janaki Raman was our deputy governor at that time. A very straightforward and very sorted person, and very knowledgeable in terms of central banking and the operation and transactions of central. So he was going through all that along with a few of colleagues, and they were trying to analyze the transactions and find out how this happened and what happened and how to rectify it. So the whole focus was not on fault finding, but finding the gaps in the system and then correcting them. So that's where the whole computerization of government securities market started. And what we see of the government securities market today is a result of the reforms that were undertaken at that time. So the Janaki Raman reports were all focused on finding the gaps and bridging them through reforms. So recommendations were equally important for the Janaki Raman committee report. So that thing was sorted. On parallelly, government had set up something called joint JPC. It was called Joint Publicity. No, it was
Parliamentary Committee.
Joint Parliamentary Committee. Right. So that joint parliamentary committee was going into finding faults with who went wrong and who did wrong, and then punishing those people. Mm-hmm. So the roles were very clearly defined. One is to find faults, finding who the culprits were, and punishing them by running the natural course of law and all that. And the other was finding out gaps in the system and then trying to bridge them through whatever reforms supposed to be undertaken. So what seemed to be chaotic outside was not so chaotic within the RBI. We had a group of young officers, which included me, because I was a journalist and I came into RBI. So I was supposed to be having my ears to the ground, which was very important function that Mr. Venkatramanan had thought of this department, to get outside information inside, so that we knew what's happening in the market and we could take action accordingly. So there was this young officers committee who was helping both these committees in giving information and getting information. So it was all very structured and sorted out within the RBI, which may be a kind of chaotic outside or looking chaotic outside.
And at the same time, I think the government gave parliamentary statutory status to SEBI that time, Securities and Exchange Board of India.
Yes.
Then only. So did RBI play any role in setting up of SEBI or in recommending anything related to it?
Honestly speaking, that's quite long time back, so I won't remember very clearly. But just going by how the milieu works, the government, for anything that it wants to introduce today, it will consult all the regulators that exist and then take whatever action that is necessary. So consultation must have happened, but I'm not sure whether, I know in what way and how and all.
Yeah, I'm sure what have happened, and SEBI itself is coming out as a strong regulator in itself now for the markets. So,
but I remember we did lend out some people to, initially when SEBI was set up, it had drawn people from income tax, from customs, from RBI, and just to help it start functioning and set up systems and all. And then once it started running, then it started recruiting people of its own. So that kind of assistance we must have given at that time.
I think that does continue because the most recent and the youngest regulator now is IFSCA. And they also had pulled a lot of people from SEBI actually to start with. So I'm sure, all the regulators, given their experience, lend out a hand for all the knowledge sharing and the initial phase. Great, ma'am. I'll come to the next, the one I'm more familiar with, 1992. I was just a kid, so I didn't know nothing about the actual things happening on the ground. Of course, we know it only through books and articles. Something I have seen is more latest is the global financial crisis of 7-8 that happened. And I think Dr. Y.V. Reddy was the governor that time, and he passed on the reins to Dr. Subbarao in 2008, while the crisis was just unfolding. So, and it was not India initiated, it was not India specific, it was more at a global level. In fact, RBI has been praised for how well it was handled in India relative to the global situation and the various other developed countries. So what was the situation like then for you, or how was RBI functioning that time? Because that would have also been quite a stressful or a busy time for RBI.
Very much, because Dr. Reddy was governor. Actually, when global financial crisis broke, Dr. Reddy was on his way out and Dr. Subbarao was on his way in. It happened at that time. So I think the day Dr. Subbarao took over, the next day or next week or some such thing, and the Lehman crisis happened. Mm-hmm. So it was like that, and Dr. Subbarao, I remember, kept saying that as I came in I brought in the global financial crisis. And people would ask him as to when it will end. It would say that probably when I go out of the RBI. Meant as a joke, but it literally so happened that after 2.5 years of governor, Dr. Subbarao, taking the reins and all these things, the global financial crisis continued. And after that, taper tantrum took over. And then by the time he was about to go, then it was like, getting somewhere close to things being normal.
Maybe he was God sent to handle that situation for India.
Probably. But the whole thing, as you rightly said, the times were very, very busy and very stressful for the RBI, because Dr. Reddy, I call him a true patriot in the sense that he always took the decision in the interest of the country about a policy or B policy. So he was a person who did not allow capital account convertibility or overnight capital account convertibility, so to say. And he also did not allow what at that time was the market crying hoarse about was securitization. Securitization is basically what was happening abroad was that in US especially, house mortgages were very rampant. So the commercial banks had so much of liquidity that they kept giving loans left, right, and center to buy houses on mortgage, of course. And then what they would do is they would collate all these housing loans of individuals, make one single loan, and then turn it into paper, turn it into bonds, and sell those little bonds to investors, what is called scrips. So that is securitization. So I securitize my loan by selling it to someone else. So I get the liquidity and I re-lend it. That liquidity I give back in the form of loan. So my loan portfolio keeps increasing, getting enlarged. So that securitization was something that was demanded here in India also, but Dr. Reddy resisted. And there was a hue and cry about this in the marketplace, that why RBI is so conservative, and when the world is running, you're not even moving. And little short of gullies, we were getting all those abuses from the market that we are not allowing this, we are not very slow, we are retrogrades and all that. But Dr. Reddy stood firm. He said, no, this is an animal that we do not yet understand fully. So let us understand it fully. So he set up committee to move forward into that and all the things. When he said, let's understand, let's see whether it is really useful to India, and then we will introduce it. And that became the savior of India so far as the global financial crisis was concerned. Because when Lehman Brothers collapsed, the loans that it was holding on its portfolio was all of it securitized loans. And nobody knew who the loan belonged to, where to recover the money from, because it was all bundled, then broken apart and then sold. So mera loan aaj kiske paas hai, nobody knew. So they didn't know who to recover it, which house to go and sell, which house was mortgaged, nobody knew. So it all had to be written off or refinanced. So whichever way they handled it. But that was the problem. And that is how we were saved. And that is what everybody thanked RBI and Dr. Reddy specifically later on, that had he not been there, had we not controlled whatever pace we wanted to run at, we would not have got saved from the global financial crisis. So,
right. Yeah, so sometimes being cautious is not that bad. Sometimes it's looked upon that we should go with the trend. It's okay, but it's very important. I think the word that you used, till we understand the animal, don't try to get into it. Otherwise, we don't know how it will behave, which way it will go. And when it's, public's money on the line, we have to be extra cautious.
Absolutely. And the US is a developed world. They can afford a crisis or the other. India is still developing, even today. I'm not talking about 25 years back. 25 years back, it was still in a bad shape. So you could ill afford such collapses. And you have to protect that poor depositor who is, who doesn't know where his next meal is going to come from. He cannot afford any losses, financial losses. So looking at him, all the policies were formulated, and even today are formulated.
Right. So I'll come to, on that point, that depositor who is, that money is earning and that's his livelihood on a daily basis, that's there. That was quite shaken, I think, in 2016, although it was not RBI's decision, it was the government's decision to demonetize the currency, if you notice that time. But it had hit hard to a lot of people, the common man, and a lot of people who didn't even get to know and didn't even get to deposit. So in our last conversation, in fact, you were sharing one incident where a person, 10,000, but it was his life saving, and he didn't even know that this money has become paper in time to be able to convert it. Not that, the banking system or RBI was not communicating about converting it, but it had not reached to the poorest of poor to be able to take action in time. What about such situations when RBI is there to protect and everybody trusts, but 2016, for a lot of people, even today, is a very, very painful time, I guess, that they have gone through. What was RBI's strategy that time to handle the situation?
At that time, we were acting like a good soldier for the government, because it is all government was in its right to take that decision. Economists or economics will never support such a decision because it's not a good economic policy. Demonetization is to control black money, to get whatever is coded out in the public space. It inconveniences people a whole lot. And so economists or central bank or good economic policy will never support demonetization. That is not economics' role. That is not central bank's role to prevent money laundering. It's a function of tax laws, which is not in the domain of the central bank. So having said that, and having government having taken that decision to demonetize whatever it was, we tried our best to cope with the situation, given our rent. So we were trying to replace those notes, which were getting withdrawn, by printing a lot of notes at that time. And fortunately for us, at that time, we had just taken, in consultation with the government, of course, because government is the prime authority in deciding what denomination currency note should be in. It was already decided that we will introduce 2,000 rupees denomination. And the 2,000 rupees notes had just gone into printing, and first batches were coming out of the printing press as the government announced demonetization. So we tried to print more and more of those 2,000 rupees notes and replace those withdrawn notes. Now, what was being withdrawn was 1,500. So when we introduce one 2,000 rupee note in the system, we are replacing two 1,000 rupees notes or four 500 rupees notes. So that was the pace with which we were replacing notes, but it was not enough, and we knew it. And we had told the government about all these things, that public will suffer, but public, to its credit, suffered this in the interest of, black money coming out and all that. They supported the government through and through. And the demonetization effort went for almost, I think, 7 or 8 months, withdrawal process and all that, and replacement. And only then it started kind of stabilizing. So had public not supported the move, there would have been chaos. There would have been riots, but nothing of that sort happened because public fully supported the government. And we tried our best to replace the notes quickly, to make policies so that the culprits don't get scot-free in the whole effort. And the public, the genuine public, gets what it wants or what it deserves, no replacement of its notes. So we were just being good soldiers and nothing else. Nothing more, nothing less.
Great. Yes. Ma'am, now coming back to a little more about your book, you've written in detail, but you worked with 6 governors, and all 6 must have had their own different styles of working, their own priorities towards how much information has to be given out, how much doesn't have to be given out, their own styles of communicating within and without the organization. So how has been your experience with all of them, and which one would you say has been your favorite working with?
The second part of the question is very difficult.
Yeah, that's why you mixed it in.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I'll answer that. Let's see. If in the flow of the things, if it comes out. Otherwise, you'll have to forgive me. But yeah, 6 governors, and each governor had a different style. For example, and I've described that in the book in each chapter, because each chapter is each governor and one chapter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Mr. Venkatramanan, for that matter, was very fast. Mm-hmm. The moment he uttered something, and by the time I would go to my room and try to implement what he had said, he had already finished it up. Mm-hmm. So that quick he was. And then he would be very soft-spoken and something like that he would speak. And you had to really be very sharp and very attentive to pick up what he was saying and then immediately translate it into action. Dr. Rangarajan, on the other hand, was very erudite, very clear communication, and very upright. So he had no, his task was very straightforward. He wanted to reform the monetary policy area to support by the time economic reforms program had already, it was underway. Dr. Manmohan Singh was in charge at the center, and here Dr. Rangarajan and Mr. Tarapur. So that part was very clear. There was no other time to do any other communication. But Dr. Rangarajan was very erudite, as I said. So he gave very frequent speeches to explain to people what was happening in the policy area. And those speeches came very handy to me for communication, because I would read and then try to articulate those ideas and those things to the members of public through the medium of press. That time, the press was the only intermediary in terms of communication. There was no social media. Dr. Jalan, on the other hand, was very free. He was a liberal, as I would call it, and very free in talking. So when we would do those informal meetings with the media over lunch, which in his time we started, he would be so frank that I would shudder as a communication officer. After that came Dr. Reddy, and Dr. Reddy was very free in talking, very articulate. I would call him a wordsmith. So he would turn the phrase around, and he was a darling of the press. Everybody was man power for him. So he endured himself completely. And then came Dr. Subbarao, who tried to open the RBI in terms of demystification. Financial literacy was at great peak at that time, because he undertook that as a mission.
So I think you're skipping the next second part of the question.
No worries.
Yes, absolutely.
Because all were very kind to me. I cannot pick one against the other and say that this was my favorite. But we did a lot of work in everyone's tenure, and they were all supportive.
And I can imagine, when for you, in fact, it must have been even great, because if we have such learned people and all different styles, in fact, your communication style would have also evolved with each. So for you, Absolutely. It must have been a very nice journey, a very fulfilling and satisfying journey from that aspect as a career in communications. Okay. So, ma'am, I'm picking up another incident which is widely covered in the media right now from your book, about Dr. Raghuram Rajan, and he being the darling of the media and you trying to handle his image. So I understand, image handling is important because we have to somewhere maintain the integrity, the seriousness of the organization that RBI is. But how easy or difficult was it to do that?
Slightly difficult. But not as difficult, because the governor was with me. So as it has been quoted in the media also, and they've published extracts from my book only, so no complaints about that, although the headline is mischievous as always. But when I went to the governor and asked him as to was he comfortable with that kind of comment of being James Bond and all that, he very clearly said no. And he said, do whatever you have to. So I got more or less a free hand, and then whatever interviews took place after that, or whenever he went, or somebody wanted a photo session with him and all, which was very common, because RBI governor, after all, is a big public persona. So a lot of requests I used to get, and especially because he was tall, dark, handsome, young, all that. So he made great photo material, but we would control every session. And to the extent possible, we also gave our pictures to the media, although they didn't like that initially, but they understood that, governor is too. And I wouldn't say that this is the reason we want to change the image and all that, but I would say that governor is busy. Can I give you a picture with which we have taken? It's a rather good picture. We took it professionally. So they had no complaint about our giving that picture or that being of bad quality or something. So having understood their need and to cater to their need, then they don't insist that, no, we have to come and take our picture. They would take picture and use, and slowly, over a matter of, I think, 3 to 4 months, we could replace the image and we could bring him to the professorial kind of a look in the media. So it wasn't difficult, mainly because the governor was with us on that. And media has been friend. And when you explain, I have always believed that when you explain something to media, they do understand, they appreciate your position, and they accept what you are to say.
So, ma'am, I have 2 questions more from the students' point of view now. One, as a communications career that you've seen, and all the people looking to make their careers now or entering into the job domain, what would be your key lessons that you would give them from a communications point of view that can help in their careers, irrespective of where they
communication career as a communicator?
No, communications role in a career, in building a career.
Very important, because unless you communicate, you can't explain your position. So if you are building a career, any walk of life for that matter, communication with, let's say, if you are in a middle management kind of a role, then explaining it to your junior, explaining it to your senior, both ways it will help. And unless you communicate clearly to your junior, you can't take work out of them. And unless you clearly communicate with your senior, you can't make your point. So clear communication in a hierarchy or in an organization plays a very important role in furthering careers, I would say.
And then one last question. I know it's been a long session, and thank you so much for patiently answering each of them. I'll ask, in today's light, today's generation is mostly born out of the social media itself. They are mostly, I'll say, almost if possible 24/7 on the social media. That's the life they've built. So given that fact, and of course they will be the future generations that will get into RBI, also the talents that will come in, and given the fact that RBI would like to maintain its seriousness, given the criticality of the functions that they perform, do you ever think there will be a conflict, or do you think that RBI needs to come out and allow and be a little more social media friendly as an organization?
RBI is very social media friendly right now. It is, if you see, it tweets a lot. All the policies that happen are tweeted immediately. It is on Facebook with its financial literacy drive. It is on Instagram for financial literacy. It is on WhatsApp. You will receive WhatsApp messages from RBI Kehta Hai campaign. There is, what else remains? LinkedIn also, they are very active, and they post the major policy announcements on LinkedIn. So RBI is very social media friendly. Apart from putting out the policies through social media, it also uses social media for supervision and regulation. It studies the trends that are happening in those space where central bank works. And picks up those trends from social media and studies them further, and then uses them in policy. It has also asked banks some years ago, in fact, when social media was just picking up in the public domain, it had asked banks to study social media profiles of their customers before they give loans out, to find out whether they have repayment capacity, or just a trend that a person follows, so that you know about that person more, and then accordingly profile him into your loan portfolio. So I would say RBI is quite up there. If you talk about artificial intelligence, you would have read about artificial intelligence being used for supervision now. So RBI is very much alert and very much there.
Yes, I'm sure. And, especially the RBI Kehta Hai and financial literacy initiatives being taken, I think, are very, very useful and much needed. Of course, it's been quite a time. It's still a long road to go, but I think it's very, very helpful. And definitely, as you said, we should be encouraging our children as parents also more to get involved, and not, it's not like a hidden thing कि इसके बारे में बात नहीं करना है या ये सिर्फ बड़ों की बातें हैं. I think we need to take that fear out of it. Because it's the reality of life ultimately, and the sooner they get acquainted to it, the easier it becomes, and of course they become more informed also. They don't fall to frauds. Then you become less likely, you become a little immune towards all the different ways and very unique, innovative ways that keep coming out of for frauds that keep happening, right? So yes, I think, and RBI is doing a great job, and no doubt it's a great organization, a pristine organization in the country to work with. And I'm sure this conversation would motivate, re-establish the faith, and energize the students who are already preparing to put in their best, more than their best, to get into this organization, in the coming recruitment cycles. So thank you once again, ma'am. And it's always a pleasure talking to you. There's so much of learning. I think every time I talk doesn't feel like I've already had a conversation with you. It's always new learnings come out. And thank you again. I'm looking forward to read the entire book. As I said, I've just read the excerpts as of now in a few chapters. And wishing you all the best for the success of this book.
Thank you very much, Prachi, and all the very best to you and to your students. I hope the RBI gains.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.